nature stand by consciousness by the words emanating from the lotus mouth. Attachment is what the speech is the perfection which the Lord desires. He opens what I can eyes, fills my heart with concern for all. He is my Lord, of the earth. From him start praying on it. By Jesus, the way scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, the master of the devotees. O Master of mercy, to us, and give us the faith to see. Your faith is still all of the worlds, and we take help from you to see. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Andamo in Sabbath. Srimad Paramhamsa Parivrajakacharyashta Tarshada Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Vishnabad Paramhamsa Parivrajakacharyashta Tarshada Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Sri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Shyam Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Mathura Dham Ki Jai Dwarka Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Radhadesh Dham Ki Jai Navdeep Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai Sri Gaurnitai Ki Jai Jagannath Balda Subhadra Ki Jai Sri Lalita Vishaka Radha Gopinath Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada's Transfer Book Distribution Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Nugas Ki Jai Gaur Premanande all Gaurish the assembled devotees, all Gaurish the assembled devotees, all Gaurish to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, Sri Prabhupada.
The book was not here. Someone took the Bhagavatam. Someone took the Bhagavatam.
He took it 2 days ago. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhare Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhare Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhare Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachare vanachare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki, Shri Radha Gopinath ki, Antaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Gopi Ramana. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading today from Canto 8 of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Chapter 20, entitled Bali Maharaj Surrenders the Universe, and we are taking a look at text number 12. Yad yad yasav adharmena badniyat anagasam tatapyenam nahingsishye bhitam brahmatanum ripum yadyapya savadharmena mahang badniyat anagasam tathapyenam nahingsishye bhitam brahmatanum ripum yadyapya savadharmena mam bhatniyat anagasam tathapyenam nahingsishye bhitam brahmatanum ripum
Yatyapya savadharmena mam bhatniyat anagasam tatapyenam nahingsishye bhitam brahmatanum ripum
Yatyapya savadharmena mam badniyat anagasam tathapyenam nahingsishye bhitam brahmatanum ripum
Yadyapya savadharmena
mam badniyat anagasam
Tatapyenam nahingsishye
bhitam brahmatanum ripum. Ladies.
Yadyapya savadharmena
Yadyapya savadharmena mam badniyat anagasam tatapyenam nahingsishye bhitam brahmatanum ripum yadyapya savadharmena mam badniyat anagasam tatapyenam nahingsishye bhitam brahmatanum ripum. Yadyapi, although, aso, Lord Vishnu, adharmena, crookedly, without reference to the straight way, mam, me, bhatniyat, kills, anagasam, although I am not sinful, tathapi, still, enam, against him, na, not, hingsishye, I shall take any retaliation, bhitam, because he is afraid, brahmatanum, having assumed the form of a brahmana, ripum, even though he is my enemy. Shri Radha Gopinath ki. Translation. Although he is Vishnu himself, out of fear, he has covered himself in the form of a brahmana to come to me begging. Under the circumstances, because he has assumed the form of a brahmana, even if he irreligiously arrests me or even kills me, I shall not retaliate, although he is my enemy. Purport. If Lord Vishnu, as he is, had come to Bali Maharaj and asked him to do something, Bali Maharaj certainly would not have refused his request. But, to enjoy a little humor between himself and his devotee, the Lord covered himself as a brahmana brahmachari, and thus came to Bali Maharaj to beg for only 3 feet of land. Translation again. Although he is Vishnu himself, out of fear he has covered himself in the form of a brahmana to come to me begging. Under the circumstances, because he has assumed the form of a brahmana, even if he irreligiously arrests me or even kills me, I shall not retaliate, although he is my enemy. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmritamina Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadhati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagar Jatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Shakan Vitangscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Kopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gauranghe Radhe Vrindavanishvare Vrishabhanu Sudadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Ghaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So a very important theme that comes out in this Leela of Bali Maharaj and his surrender to Lord Vishnu is the question of justice. So it is a very interesting feature of the world in which we are living in that justice is quite a big issue. In one sense, it is oftentimes it is one of the big criticisms that is launched against the ancient world in general. It sometimes does seem to be very unjust and also quite harsh. Yesterday I was looking a little bit at the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and there's the story of Gopinath Patanayaka, where he was he didn't exactly give the king all the money that was due to him, and he had a little bit of an altercation with the prince, and then he ended up on what they call the Changa, which is basically this big platform they used to put people on, and then like quite a distance below they put, it's like a pit filled with swords pointing upwards, and then they just push you, and that was the capital punishment. And then you hear that and you're like, wow, that is that's serious, but I mean, still it's even going on now. One can see so many videos. The other day my father, he was a policeman, and he also really loved, he was a soldier, so war, he looks back on the war days as like the best times of his life. So he always watches these movies and he shows me these videos of tanks and guns and these kind of things. And then sometimes he gets these movies about things that happened in the Middle East. Like the other day he showed me they caught a man, I don't know exactly what he did, and then they just, the police just came, they just shot him right there in the street. It's like a whole crowd gathered. They just pushed him on the ground and they just shot him straight in the back. And then you look at that and you're like, wow, that's serious. It's like the kind of things that happen in this world. So a large part of the way in which we have organized modern society is to try to make it more just, to make sure that innocent people do not get prosecuted, and even the punishment that we do give to people, we try to make it humane. Like, we try to aim for humane punishment. Most countries in the world nowadays, in the developed world at least, capital punishment is not even there anymore. It's just too harsh almost for us to think that you can do that. So, in one sense, we do pride ourselves in thinking that we have created a society that is much more fair than ever before. But justice, we see, is not such a simple thing. In South Africa, for example, where I'm from, one could say that there was a very unjust government up until 1994, where basically a small percentage of the population lived at the benefit of the vast majority. Like, I think there's 4 million white people in South Africa, and there's about more than 40 million people in the country. So the whites were basically enjoying a lot of, living it up, and then the rest of the country sort of not really there, and most people actually living in quite severe instances of poverty. And then in 1994 there was this big change in government. And then what happened in 1994 is, one thing that they did is they rewrote the South African Constitution. And it was lauded as this amazing document. It was like really, one of the it was one of the best constitutions in the world, because it was newly created, and then because it's very difficult to change the constitution. Even in Europe, it's like you have. I'm sure that if you go look at some of the countries' constitutions, you would still get some features there that are perhaps a little outdated and not really with the spirit, but it's still there, because to rewrite the constitution is very serious business. So South Africa had this opportunity. They wrote this constitution, and it was amazing, and the people were so excited. There was a great sense of optimism in the country, and it really seemed things would just be going wonderful, because we averted the civil war by the mercy of Mandela. There was no civil war. He was into forgiveness. The country came together, and everybody now, what they had now with this new constitution is that everybody had a whole set of rights, interesting rights. For example, everybody had the right to a house. It's like everybody had the right to have their own house, which is, one could say, is definitely, it's a human need, isn't it? To live in a shack is almost, it's not really fully dignified. Who needs a house, for God's sake, Then one could see there was also the right to safety. Everybody had the right to be protected equally by the police force, isn't it? It's not like only the rich people get the police. Everybody has to get the same amount of protection. So all these rights were given to people. People were very much excited. But now, 24 years later, there's a little bit of a problem in the country. Because even though people have been given the rights, you have the right, but practically it hasn't happened. Everybody has the right to a house, but everybody doesn't have a house. And in actual fact, the poverty has merely been increasing. There's merely been an increasing distinction between the rich and the poor. And what has definitely happened is the rich has become racially diversified. That is a fact. There's much more. It's not just one group that is rich. Well, there's a lot of different kind of rich people now. But there's still a massive amount of poor people. And so one has been given these rights, but now the problem is, okay, but whose job is it to give me this? Okay, I have the right to a house, but who's going to build me this house? Where's this house supposed to come from, and who can I blame? So a very interesting issue when one starts to see the world in terms of rights is that what happens if your rights are not fulfilled? Whose responsibility is it? So if one looks at Vedic society and the ancient world in general, there was no conception of human rights. Oh, really? It's horrible. This is such an oppressive world. And no idea. Human rights was something that came about quite recently. But see, there was something like human rights, but it was phrased a little differently. So the way in which ancient world was organized was in terms of duties. What are the duties? One would see massive philosophical tracts in all ancient societies. What are the duties of a king? So many people would speak about it. I mean, there's so many Vedic literature about this issue. There are so many, even if one looks at ancient Greek or ancient Roman traditions, that was a big question. Well, what are the duties of a king? Okay, now you have the privilege of being the king, but what are you supposed to do? What is now expected of you? And what is the duties of the citizen? Everybody had this idea that to be a citizen is not something that just comes automatically. It's like you have to do something. Even we say in the Vedic conception, they even have this idea that if you really want to be a human being, you have to do something. It's not just automatically. You cannot really be born as a human. One can say you are born with human potential. You have the potential to become a human being because you have this human body. But if you really want to be a human, then you have some duties to perform. You have some serious duties. And it's very interesting. There's in the end of the seventh canto, I think, then there is a discussion between Narada Muni and Yudhishthira, and then Narada explains all these principles of Varnashram, and then he gives some basic principles for what it means to be a human, and then he explains the different varnas, and then at the end he explains that they are like the subhumans, or people who just don't really make the mark, and then he gives some characteristics, like they're always fighting, they're always they're dishonest, they're stealing, always criticizing, always trying to cheat, all these things. And then he says these people cannot actually be part of civilization. Until they're willing to give up these things, they cannot actually form part of a functioning civilization. They cannot really get the full benefits of a civilization. So it's interesting how these two different ways of looking at the world. Either you look at your rights or you look at your duties. And the duties are, in one sense, a little bit more complete. Because now what is interesting, say in South Africa, to again use this example, so now people have the right to safety and the right to housing, but in one sense, it just means that the government has this obligation, isn't it? And this is what people are realizing now, is that, say for example, crime has gone up tremendously in the country. Now whose fault is it? Well, in the Vedic conception, it is clearly the fault of the government. If there is, it's explained that in one sense, the king is the servant of the people. So the tax that you pay, you are actually paying the salary of the king. There's one of the philosophers who explains that. And he says that, but what is it, if you pay someone a salary, then you have to do something. So what is the king supposed to do? Well, he is supposed to protect the people. So that's an interesting conception. It means that in one sense, if you are, the repeated victim of crime, then you can actually you don't have to pay your taxes, because the king is not busy, he's not doing his job, isn't it? It's like if you phone a plumber and he sits there the whole day and he doesn't fix anything, and then at the end he asks to be paid, then it's like, no, I'm not going to pay you because it's that, you didn't fix my plumbing. So in one sense, that is interesting, that when one starts to think about duties, then it really shifts the perspective and puts it on someone. It's someone's duty to perform these things. Now, for the individual, it's also very interesting if one starts to think in terms of duties, because I work a lot with young people, and it's interesting with young people in the modern world is that there's like some universal tendencies amongst them, and one of them is a great sense of uncertainty of what I am supposed to do with my life. There's like a common theme. You get it within the Krishna consciousness movement, wherever you are. It's like you ask young people, and it's like the big sense of confusion, What am I supposed to do with my life? I have so much freedom, so much opportunity, but I have no idea what to do. It causes so much disturbance, or sometimes it really takes people many years to figure out. Usually, oftentimes when they, like I have one friend, where we are based, a lot of young people working together. There's only really one of us. There's one of us who clearly has a clear goal in his life. He's not at all disturbed by what should he do, what shouldn't he do. The reason being that he got a child when he was 16. So for him, it's like a little bit unplanned when he was at school. And then later he became a devotee. But now his life is very clear. He's like the one guy who has his head on right, because he understands that, I have to work and I have to get my life established, because I have some serious responsibility. So it's interesting how part of the reason why young people are so unable to understand what they're supposed to do with their life is because they have so little responsibility. Isn't it, in the modern world? You have very little responsibility towards your parents. You have very little responsibility towards society. You have actually, in practical sense, it's like no one will force you to do anything. You can actually, you see what you have and go to university, and then you are allowed to just go and see how much money you can make. And then that's sort of like the game that we're playing, Because your parents, they have to take care of their own pension, and it's like, if they didn't plan for their retirement, then, it's their problem, it's not my problem. And that's sort of how society is set up now in such a way. Very little responsibility. So, but this responsibility is actually quite important, because we see that responsibility, even though it feels sometimes like it can constrict our freedom a little, it actually provides us with a massive sense of direction in our life. And that's the thing that actually directs a large portion of your life, is your responsibilities. So for many people, that's actually a very good place to start when it comes to trying to figure out what should you do with your life. Well, maybe before you start really getting very mental about what it is that you want, like, do I want to do this, or do I want to do that, and I'm not sure what I want. But maybe let's start with our responsibilities. What is our duties? Who are the people that we are indebted to in our life, and how does this manifest? Ultimately, we understand that our duties are towards Krishna. But this also manifests in a very practical sense, One can see, for example, the sannyasi, he renounces everything, and, he leaves his social obligations. But, that provided that, he has to make a plan for his wife, what will happen to his wife after he takes sannyas. So it's not like when we have this idea of just abandoning social obligation. No, it's like you have to, it's one is always the relationship of the responsibilities towards Krishna are multifaceted. It manifests also within this world and within the various duties that we have. one can see that Srila Prabhupada, for example, when people got married, he saw it as a very serious thing, serious obligation. Serious thing, like to now somehow or other stay in this relationship and to make it work. So that responsibility also is, in one sense, it was connected to Krishna, isn't it now? Because you have taken responsibility for this person. So to now avoid this responsibility would be very unfavorable also for your spiritual life. So what will it do to your consciousness to just neglect your responsibilities? So responsibilities are really a good place to start in trying out to figure out what one should do with one's life. Because it provides one with a certain sense of structure, some certain elements within there, and then from there one can start to figure out, what should I do and how should I fill in the rest of my life, Once one have these the pillars of certainty, and from there one can start to construct the rest of one's life. Now a reason why there's such a difficulty in people in understanding what are their responsibilities is also because our responsibilities to a large part are determined socially. It's just like we have social obligations to people, isn't it? We are so indebted to so many different people. And it is due to these relationships with the different people in our lives that our duties in one sense are born. So one can see that, for example, when one takes shelter of a spiritual master, that's actually what happens at the time of initiation. That's what really happens, is that now one enters into a relationship with this person. And what does it mean to have a relationship with someone? A relationship immediately means some sense of responsibility. That's really what it means when one takes these vows. And it's, okay, now I've accepted this person as a part of my life. He's now a part of my life. And now my life will have to be somehow adjusted, or somehow have to include this responsibility. It's like, imagine if you get married and you just never move in together, never live together, never pay for, never get children. But what is your marriage then? It's like that's not really then a real relationship. So one can see in spiritual life, relationships is such an important thing. And really for someone from a modern society, really is a little bit of a shift to start thinking in this way. And but there are also important benefits from it. A very important thing from our perspective, there's, for example, somewhere, I think it's in I'm not sure where in the Bhagavad Gita it is, I think maybe around the 18th chapter, then Prabhupada says that one has to understand that when Krishna says, please surrender unto me, perform devotional service unto me, we have to understand that it is for our benefit. It's like, that's an interesting thing. It's like, you also get the benefit, When we perform our spiritual duties or obligations to others, it's not just the other person that is benefiting from it. You yourself also will benefit from it. You yourself will then also get the results of that, whether it is even in a material sense or in a spiritual sense. If you perform your obligations properly towards your children, your husband, towards your spiritual master, towards your community, then somehow you will also really start to see the results of that. And it is amazing how people's experience of communities can be different. And oftentimes you see many of the people who oftentimes who give a lot, they're also the people who oftentimes are generally sort of satisfied the most. Because they're the ones that actually get a lot of the benefit, because they are now experiencing the results of what comes from giving what we are supposed to give. So, but when it comes to spiritual life, our spiritual duties definitely are a little bit different than material duties, because material duties ultimately are rooted in a little bit of a business deal. So I was saying, like, we do things because we get a specific result. Like, why is it that people are able to work for so many hours every day? I mean, I know people who are working, 15 hours a day. How is it possible to work for 15 hours a day? And they don't even like their boss. Oftentimes, they don't like their boss, they don't like their employees, but somehow or other they're able to consistently, pitch up at work every day, same time, work very hard. Why do they do it? Well, because they get paid. Just like if you get paid, you can actually do quite a lot. If someone is willing to give you money for something, then it's like you can endure quite a lot. And you can be quite dutiful and fixed in your obligations, so long as that salary comes in every month. And what is amazing is that our whole society has now been completely reorganized around this principle of payment. One can see that a tendency in many governments, or oftentimes in many places, is, for example, privatization of state-owned property. So, for example, you could have, there's two options. Say you have the electricity provider in a country. Now that electricity can either be owned by the government, so then it's run by the government employees, and obviously the money that comes from it goes into the government chest or whatever, the government fund. Or what you can do is you can privatize it. So the government says, okay, we give it to some external company, they do it for some payment and they get the profit from it. And in many places in the world, they're seeing that, well, privatization really helps. Because some or other, you can take a government-owned entity and it just cannot work. It's just not making any money, it's falling apart, and then you just privatize it and then it just becomes an amazing success, you know. One sees it with many airlines in the world, they're doing this now. They just privatize it. Because the moment people start to work for personal profit, then something really happens. You know, there's really some amazing result that comes from it. And if you're just working for your government salary and you do this job, you know, for the love of your country, God, I mean, love of your country can only really get you so far. So this sense of motivation is very important when we start to think about doing this, because in spiritual life, obviously, there's a little bit of an issue, because spiritual life, by definition, is defined by the sense that whatever we perform or whatever service we give, it is not motivated by material desires. In an ultimate sense, you know, one cannot be purely moved by just some material motivation. There's some other reason why one wants to do this. Why would you take this obligation towards the spiritual master? Why would you do something like that? You know, life, there's already so little time in your life, isn't it? Why would you now include another person in here? And it doesn't really even give you anything, isn't it? It's like, it's not going to give you money or anything. He just wants something from you. He wants now to see some change in your life. So the motivation when it comes to spiritual life is really something that has to be taken in mind, is that ultimately it is a personal sense of enthusiasm. This enthusiasm to somehow serve Krishna. Somehow to see that from this I will become happy. I am personally motivated to now give some of myself. Shri Shri Radha Gopinath ki Jai. Because, for a variety of reasons. There are philosophical reasons. You know, I'm a part and parcel of Krishna. But there's also just the experiential side of it. That I can see that, wow, if I do this some or other, I really experience a sense of meaning and fulfillment that I cannot find anywhere else. So this motivation behind spiritual life is something that is very, very important, because in one sense it is our greatest asset. It is your greatest asset in spiritual life. Is this enthusiasm, this inspiration to give something to Krishna. There are some very interesting letters where Prabhupada writes about, why he set up this society like he set it up. Why did he give us this whole regulated program of deity worship, give us all these principles? Why did he do it? And it takes so much energy to maintain it, isn't it? So much money and manpower is required to keep the wheels turning, to keep the service to Krishna turning. Now one would say, why did Prabhupada do that? And he makes it quite clear in a couple of letters. He says, well, because if we follow this program, what will happen is that our enthusiasm will be protected. Our enthusiasm in spiritual life will be protected. Not only will it be protected, but it will grow. We will become spontaneously enthusiastic. Now, obviously there's very high levels of spiritual spontaneity when it comes to, the deeper mysticism in terms of, the holy name and, love for Krishna and these things, which is very high. But there's also now, immediately, for the average devotee, there's also a sense of spontaneity, some enthusiasm that is there. And really for us, we have to really understand that somehow we have to protect this. Really protect this enthusiasm. See what are the things that give us this enthusiasm. And try to nurture this enthusiasm. Because this is the currency that we need. This is the thing that we need to be able to stay motivated in spiritual life. And without this enthusiasm, it will be very, very difficult. Some people can do it. Some people can, out of a basis of duty, they can actually do quite a lot. I think generally the older generation still have this conditioning, they have this power to understand that, this is my duty and I have to perform it. But for myself, at least, it's definitely not a big part of my psychology. Is to be dutiful. In actual fact, quite the opposite. Not really motivated by this duty. But if we are inspired, then then it is so much easier. Then it becomes very natural. And Prabhupada says that really is the point of this regulation. The regulated aspect of spiritual life is to protect this spontaneous motivation that we have. And I find it also interesting if one reads a little bit about what Prabhupada said in different letters about preaching, about also trying to extend this inspiration and spiritual life to others. And it is also something I found very, very important, how oftentimes Prabhupada would prioritize the fact that when we try to give Krishna consciousness to others, this is really the start of it. The start of it is to give them this kind of enthusiasm to somehow give something to Krishna, whatever it is, in whatever shape or form it comes, And then later on what happens is then one starts to help them with some regulation and some duties and some principles. But in the beginning, Prabhupada is very serious that he says that one has to fan the sparks, isn't it? Every individual has some kind of interest in Krishna, and this is really where one starts. And now to try to fan these sparks, to make it alive. And in reaching out to people of the modern world, I think that is really an important thing to keep in mind, that this is where we want to start. Where we want to start off with is to start off with capturing people's attention, capturing people's spontaneous enthusiasm, and then helping them have this experience of somehow rendering some service unto Krishna. And then from there, all the other things come, and the regulation and all these more the serious things one can say, But in the beginning, regulation and these things, it seems quite daunting. But after one has had some experience of Krishna consciousness, then it starts to make sense. I remember when I just started getting into Krishna consciousness, I was at a university, and there it was interesting because I had a very, one would say, a limited experience of what Krishna consciousness really is. It took me a while to understand that it's the Hare Krishna, this is Hare Krishna. After a while, I was like, you chant the mantra and you sort of heard about it, but it was very it was a student kind of organization. It was very fun and very relaxed in one sense. But the essence was there, chanting Hare Krishna, taking prasadam and hearing the philosophy. And the temple was a little further away, about 40 minutes away. So it was after quite a while that I actually the first time went to the temple. And then you enter into a whole other atmosphere, isn't it? You walk in and then immediately you feel the pressure of the rules. And once you come into a temple, you feel it. It's like people bow down and you're like, what? Bow down? It's just like, I'm a Protestant. I don't bow down to anyone. I don't even to God. You don't bow down. You may kneel. That's okay. But it's like to bow down is really a step too far. And then there's all these rules that come. Do this, do that, and then someone comes and they gives you a flame, and you're like, geez, what do I do now? Because there's a regulated aspect to Krishna consciousness that later on becomes a great source of strength, isn't it? Later on it becomes a great source of strength. We were in the ashram. Last night there was a massive feast. Next morning you wake up, you feel so heavy. By the time that the day starts, you're so depressed, you're so tired. But then somehow you can just sort of go through the regulated aspect of devotional service and, come out the other end a better man. But in the beginning, the regulation, it's something that we are very afraid of, very afraid of it. I remember the first time I took my father, he was with us in Mayapur. Now my father is an interesting man, as I said. He had some interesting taste and he's very big. He's about as tall as I am, but he weighs probably 120. So this big guy. And he doesn't like to wear long pants. He likes to wear shorts. If you ever go to South Africa, you'll see that there's a group of people there, the Afrikaners, and that's one thing that they really like, is to wear shorts. Just really short shorts. Because it's Africa, it's hot, it's a wild place. So my daddy has shorts, and he used to be what they call a deacon in the church. But then at a certain point, but he didn't want to wear a tie. Because he hated ties. And then they said, he cannot sit with the other deacons if he doesn't wear a tie. And then it was this big thing for him, and he just completely rebelled against it, and then just stopped his church membership altogether, So, but then we went to Mayapur, and then we were walking in, And that was me, my dad, we were cruising. It was quite interesting to be with him in India because it was quite a sight, you know. I'm already quite tall, he is massive. So wherever we go, we got a lot of stares from people, you know. And so when we walked into Mayapur, it was, yeah, the Bengal especially, you know. It was, the people were amazed. So then we went to, I'll tell the other story now. We went into the temple, and then there was this Bengali security guards, you know, and then they stopped my dad. They said, "Hey, no shorts, no shorts," you know. So it was, it was a difficult one for him, you know, because he had all these samskaras from the church, and now it seems like it's the same thing. And then, but the next day, I was amazed. The next day, he put on his jeans, you know. So he swallowed it. But that's also because he could appreciate now a little bit. But it's interesting how in the beginning, these things can be for people a very big thing. Very big. This regulated aspect is a very big thing, you know, especially in the Western world, where people really struggle to swallow these things. And trying to spread Krishna consciousness, we have to really try to keep this focus that, you know, no one will submit himself to a process of regulation if there is not some benefit in it. This is really how it works, you know, like, it doesn't work like that. People are only willing to do this if they have experienced some enthusiasm. Like, when I was getting into Krishna consciousness at the university, had this whole experience, went to the temple, then very soon afterwards I went to I decided to go stay at the temple for a while, for a month. It was like a big jump for me, you know, December marathon. So I went there for December. Now I didn't know about this December marathon. Actually, I didn't even know about book distribution. So I went there, and I was expecting that it's going to be the same. You know, you go there, you just eat as much as you want to, and it's sort of like relaxed. And okay, there's this program going on, but you know, it's like a very relaxed environment. And then, you know, they just said, okay, tomorrow the marathon is starting. And I'm like, marathon? I'm not a runner. I'm like, I don't really like marathons so much, you know. So I heard, okay, well, there's this book thing going on. And then next day, I just found myself shoved into a back of the Hare Krishna mobile, this big van that they have, you know, sitting in the back with a lot of people, got given a sack of books, and then, you know, they just eject me somewhere on a street corner in Cape Town. And then I just had to now somehow distribute books. And I remember as I got off there, standing on the street corner with my book bag, and no idea how to do this. Like, I had no idea how to do this. You know, I came from a very small town. Even the city was already like, you know, a bit of an intimidating factor. And then I really pertinently remembering that I was standing there, I was thinking that this is completely unreasonable. This is completely unreasonable, what they are doing to me, you know. It's like, it does not make sense, you know. And I was really struggling with it, you know. And but I must say, in that month, I wonder if I would have actually taken to Krishna consciousness really fully if I did not experience that month. Because in that month, then you obviously, when one gets pushed like this, it is very challenging, very unreasonable. Doesn't really make sense to do this to someone. But somehow or other, you know, one participates, one does it, and then you experience this amazing sense of ecstasy, isn't it? There's like few things that compare to this ecstasy of really putting yourself out there for Krishna, and then experiencing that there's some amazing result here. So for me, it was a big turning point in my spiritual life. Is this definitely was a challenge, but then in experiencing the result of this challenge, I'm like, whoa, there really is something here that is very special. So this interesting balance in trying to give Krishna consciousness to people, to not fry people out, but also in trying to understand that, you know, somehow they have to really have this experience of what it means to render some meaningful service onto Krishna, and then that is the seed that can grow and grow into all these other things. So this was this is just a very interesting point here. What one sees to bring it back to Bali Maharaj is here what he is saying here. He is saying that, you know, though he is Vishnu himself, out of fear he has covered himself in the form of a Brahmana. And even if he irreligiously arrests or kills me, I shall not retaliate. So this is very interesting. I mean, this is a deep one to swallow, but one sees that this element within Krishna consciousness of sometimes things happening that are a little bit unreasonable. You know, it's taken me a while, but I've accepted that it is somehow part of this movement. Somehow it's part of it. And it plays its function. Because what is amazing is that once one makes the shift towards understanding that what we really need in the world is
is not justice. It's not justice. In actual fact, the problem is that the world is perfectly just. The world is perfectly just. Everybody is actually getting exactly what they have given. Everybody is receiving the results of what they have cultivated in the past. You know? Now, I mean, everybody understood this. In the ancient world, Christianity, one also sees it, isn't it? That's what Jesus simply says. You simply sow, well, as you sow, so you shall reap. You know? And the concept of karma has developed so much more. That this is really what is happening in this world. What is simply getting a reaction for what one has done. So, justice, isn't that justice? Isn't that how justice works? Justice means that you get what you deserve. So, from a broader perspective, one can see that the world is perfectly just. But it's also very harsh. Because justice is very, very harsh, isn't it? Capital punishment looks very harsh. But if you kill someone and you are killed, isn't that just? Isn't that just? You have done that. You have killed someone. Now you will be killed. So we oftentimes clamor for justice. But do we really want justice? Is that really what you want? Do you really want what you deserve? It's really something to think about. I don't. I personally don't. Even if I just look at this life, I'm hoping that there are some things, some reactions that I can skip. That, you know, if I cannot get a reaction for it, I would be glad. You know, I would count myself very lucky. So, in our conception, really in Vaishnavism especially, as Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj calls it, fully fledged theism, where one understands that the world is not merely just. There is not merely a system of law and order that is keeping everything in place on a material level. See, there are also atheist philosophers that also believe in justice. You know, the Buddhists, for example, they also believe in karma. You have the karma mimamsakas. They also believe in karma. They understand, no, you just get what you deserve. You know, the world is just. So, but when we speak about Vaishnavism or this fully fledged theism, we understand that there's something above this. You see, there is something more than justice. There's something higher than justice. What is that? That is mercy. Amazing, isn't it? How justice and mercy is totally opposed to one another in one sense. Because mercy is all about getting what you don't deserve. And that's what it means. That's what mercy means. It means that you now get something that you actually don't deserve. And this is really what we need. See, this is what we want. We do not want justice. We want more than we deserve. And it is possible within this world to be able to get that. And it is an amazing thing. I think it is in the CC where it's explained that Krishna Kaviraj says that if you really want to use your logic properly, if you really want to get the full benefit of your logic, try to understand the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. Try to really contemplate the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. Then you will really get the benefit of your intelligence, to really understand what it means. So we have entered into a society that is basically based around mercy. This is the core of the society. Around it, definitely, there are other things. There is justice, a big important element. Prabhupada did not want us just to gain mercy for ourselves. He wanted us to change the world, you know. And Varnashram in one sense is that. It's a society that is now based on regulation and justice and order and law to somehow create a platform of stability so that people can, you know, practice a spiritual life or at least be protected from sinful reactions around that. So our mission is definitely broader than this. But at the core of it is this mercy element. This ability that we can somehow get more than we deserve. And Bali Maharaj really shows us, in one sense, he gives us an amazing glimpse into the mind of a person who has really received the full mercy of Lord Vishnu. You know? Because he did this. He gave more than what was reasonable. That's what basically happened. He did more than what was merely expected of him. He gave more than what could be reasonably required from someone. But then he got an amazing result. So in this, really something to ponder on. The principles of mercy and how important mercy is, whether it is reaching out to other people in the world and also even within our own devotional communities, to understand that a successful community cannot be a community that is merely obsessed with justice, where every person is merely trying to think, am I getting what I deserve?
That really doesn't work like that. At the core of any community, you need a group of people, and the more the merrier, of people who are thinking from this perspective of somehow giving others more than they deserve. In one sense, because we also want to receive more than we deserve. So such a difference in mentality, and really very refreshing, very challenging. But that is really why we are here. That is why we are here. Because we've been touched in one sense or another, touched by the Spirit. And now it is a lifetime task to now also try and assimilate the Spirit in our own way, according to our own ability, and to try to develop this in our own life. And then also be the recipient of this amazing good fortune. Okay, we will end here and we will ask, are there any questions or comments about something that has been said today? Manohar.
You see, very interesting, Bali Maharaj considers himself an Anagasam, that he is sinless.
Yes.
And he says, even if Vamana Devi adharmena, against the Dharma in a completely wrong way, still he will not retaliate. But the question now comes in, whether this is the attitude of him as a devotee towards Lord Vishnu, or it's a general pattern that he is trying to present here as to how Kshatriya and all other lower levels of society should treat the Brahmana. Because Brahmana is taking shelter in the form of Brahmana.
Yes. So if you would read the commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, then what is interesting, then he shows that both is going on. Both is going on. On the one sense, what happens is Bali Maharaj is explaining from his perspective as a devotee what is actually happening. But at the same time, he is giving arguments to appease the Daityas, to explain to them, no, I mean, even according to Varnashram, what I'm doing is proper. So he does both. He does both at the same time. So there's definitely these two levels. And Vishwanath, then he throws it out, and then he does, they do the Sanskrit juggling where they show that this word means this, but it could also actually mean that. And then there's a whole other layer of meaning in it. So yeah, both. But in one sense, it's true. Both are going on. Both are really going on. Whatever perspective one sees it on, in one sense, the conclusion is definitely the same. That this Spirit. And that is interesting, even if you just want, even if you just, there is, in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, there is that sequence of verses that explains that, for that person, Ragadvesha vimuktastu vishayan indriyescharan atma vasher vidayatma prasadam adhigachati. The Prophet says that for that person who overcomes the duality of hatred, of attachment and aversion, he will get the full mercy of the Lord. Now this prasadam means mercy, but it also means satisfaction. And then in the next verse it explains that for that person who has attained this satisfaction, all his suffering is destroyed, and he becomes peaceful, and then his intelligence starts to function. And then one of the acharyas, they explain that what this means is that, the satisfaction that comes from performing devotional service, that is the basis upon which one can control the senses. And because one can control the senses, now we can build a society. And he is showing that actually, it's not that bhakti is opposed to society, no. Whatever we see in this world that is good, it is fully rooted within bhakti. If you read, for example, the Danda Niti Shastra, which is the Shastra of political organization, and then they would say, the king, if there is not a king, what happens is then you have the law of the jungle, where it's just the weak eats the strong, or the strong eats the weak, and it's just, animal society is very horrible. So it means that whatever we have built that is not animal society, it is somehow because some bhakti is there. So it's interesting how these two things really run parallel, that without bhakti, one will not even really be able to respect the Brahmana. One will not even be able to respect the higher classes of society, because it is all based on some inner satisfaction. And once that inner satisfaction goes, one loses the ability to control the senses. And then one will quickly see everything tumbles into pieces. I mean, it's interesting if one looks, this is just something that I've really thought about, is how, if one looks at Europe, just like, Catholic Europe, such a massive civilization that was built. And some amazing things that they were able to accomplish, a level of social organization that is always also quite fascinating. But it was all revolving around Jesus, isn't it? It's amazing. Like at the root of it, there was a pure devotee, and it was all these things. There was the side consequence of people being able to worship a pure devotee, and now we can build a society upon that. And it was interesting to see, because in one sense, according to our acharyas at least, it means that any civilization that exists, at the core of it, there must be a pure devotee. There must be some pure devotees, because there must be some bhakti that makes it able to now start to organize things. And even I think in Krishna consciousness is very important, because when we see the social inadequacies of our movement, or let us say rather underdevelopment. Our movement we're just starting to develop as more than a theology. For a long time we just existed as a theology. It was just like, it was just a theological movement. In the temple there was very little personal development, and it was just, very simple. You worship Radha Gopinath, and everything will be provided for you, and you just have no personal life. But once one starts to develop society, then we need more varnashram and all these kind of things. And I think it's an important thing to understand that when we see the gaps in varnashram, maybe some gaps of respect or some gaps of people to be able to perform their duties, then one has to understand that, well, we have to now go back to the root. The root of this is the fact that all these things are happening is because people are not inspired. Because people are uninspired. Whether you yourself, as you see your own inabilities to perform your duties, or you see the inability of others to come up to the mark, that's really the thing that we have to understand. Wow, the problem here is that there is no inspiration. No inspiration. And without this inspiration, then how can we build any kind of society? Then I can punish people or do all kinds of things, but it won't really work. So yeah, it's just a very, very, very deep insight. So thank you very much for pointing that out, Prabhu, these parallel levels in terms of civilization and transcendence, and how the two really are quite interdependent. Any other questions? There's another. Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I was thinking, I have actually a question and commentary.
Good.
We have this Krisya Para Dukkha Dukkhi.
Yes.
You are like compassionate. I was thinking, Bali Maharaj, in Vaishnavism, like you say, in perspective that what is justice, when you say that is justice, and what is mercy?
Yes.
Yeah. Sometimes if we look from our side, from our perspective, like, oh, what happened to me, or what the others are doing, like this perspective. This is really, you can then see, like in the case of Bali Maharaj, he's a role model, how to see a hand of God, that this is mercy actually.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that this is unjust, this is just. Because we know theoretically, when we practice is different.
Yeah.
Everyone is your best friend, because Krishna acted through the all entities.
Yes.
But when injustice come upon another person, then is this Varadukkha coming out.
Interesting, yeah.
When you really see on which level you are, that when you want really to help yourself first, actually to help others.
Yes.
I was thinking how to deal with this mentality, because this is rooted in us because of the system.
Yes,
because
yes.
we want to get, not give.
Yeah, so that is definitely the challenge in devotional service, or I mean society in general, is to somehow overcome the selfish tendency, because the problem is that it's like if you take birth within this world, there's a problem is that there's an optical illusion, because it looks like if you look at the world from your perspective, it actually looks like you're in the middle. It looks actually like I'm sort of in the center, and everyone else is around me, and it really does look like that, So we are born into this, and that's what Krishna says. Icha dvaisha samutaina dvandva mohena bharata. He says that living beings are born into this world, into the duality of illusion. It's just like this is what this world does. It creates this experience. So one has to fight it. One has to actually fight it. And there's a variety of ways in which one can fight it, but the most powerful way is the regulative process of devotional service. Even, say, in coming basically in just following the regulative practice, even in that, you have to be unselfish. So many things. I'm hungry now, I want to sleep now, but I can't because, Mangalarti or this or that. So a large part of the regulated process of devotional service, it just roots out. It roots out this natural tendency to become selfish. But we have to understand that it is like the beard. It's like a beard. You don't have a beard, but I can see my beard is growing already. So the beard is just like, you shave it, and then it just grows a beard. So the consciousness is also, it just grows a beard. It's like selfishness, it just grows. And you shave it off. But it's after a couple of days, and you're like, hey, here it is again. So it has to be shaved again and again. We have to clean it, because the world makes us selfish. Just by being here, it makes us selfish. So that's the one question. We just have to really work on it. And then when it comes to our responsibility towards others, very interesting question. For myself, I see, okay, everything is the mercy of Krishna, but then I see someone else, maybe the victim of injustice. What do I do then? Well, we can also give mercy to others. We're completely empowered to give mercy to others. Do not doubt your own ability to be able to help others. Even if one is just listening to someone else. You see? If a large part, you can do so much help for people to just really listen to them when they are speaking to you. In one sense, it's also like a form of mercy. You're being merciful towards them. You are allowing them, you are giving them some of your time and energy. You don't have to. So mercy, the understanding of mercy and prioritizing mercy in our understanding of the world does not make us impotent. That's not at all. It's not a debilitating philosophy where now I just take everything as it comes. No. One can do a lot to change the lives of others also, because one becomes empowered by a sense of mercy, and one can help others. One can help others also get what they do not deserve, which is ultimately happiness and a sense of peace and community, which is something actually that you actually need to have very good karma. Very good karma to be in a good community. If you think, it means that in your last life, you properly must have executed all the social duties that were expected of you. And when you do not execute proper social duties, it means in your next life, you will be born in a community where people do not properly execute social duties. So I mean, we oftentimes say, we want good communities, but it's like, wow, I mean, do we really even deserve good communities? I definitely don't. It's like, if I look at even just how I treated my parents when I was young, So it's an interesting thing. But we can change the lives of others by being merciful towards them. Okay, last questions. We have went a little bit over time. Yes, Prabhu.
Can you explain the system of how many times the system is actually broken or used against itself when somebody pretends to be one who is not? Like currently, of course, Vishnu is different. He pretends to be a Brahman, but most of the Pandavas, all other, they are Kshatriyas, and they dress as a Brahmanas, and they pretend to be something else in such a way. They also do some tricks or.
Yeah. No, it's a big problem.
And then somebody just.
Well, that's what they say. Yeah, they say the age of Kali, isn't it? The age of hypocrisy. That's what it means, hypocrisy. It means that people are in positions, but they're not actually that. And even if one sees when Varnashram began, when did Kali begin? What was the first sign that Maharaj Pariksit, when he found Kali in his kingdom, what did he find? He found a Sudra dressed as a king, killing a cow. It was the first sign of Kali Yuga. What is this? Number one, why are you killing a cow? Number two, how can you be dressed as a king? How can you be dressed as a king and do this thing? So it means that we live in an age that things are very mixed up. And in one sense, that is it's a real problem. It's a real problem. But the best place to start is for ourselves. At least if we really can try not to be hypocritical, that's really the only thing that we can be, because what also comes with it is that one has to also sometimes give people the benefit of the doubt, especially in this movement sometimes, like we have to understand that we are all actually trying to be something that we are not. Is it Vaishnavism? Like Prabhupada used to say, people were saying, but when Prabhupada speaking about Varnashram, then the devotees were saying, yeah, but we are all Vaishnavas, what's the point of Varnashram? And then Prabhupada says, well, Vaishnava is not such a cheap thing. Why are they falling down? He says, if they are Vaishnavas, then why are they falling down? So it means that to be a Vaishnava is very difficult, but that's what they're trying to do every day. So there's an element of also then realizing that in this age there is some hypocrisy is there. We should be very careful to root it out, especially within ourselves, and to try our best to create a pure society. That's why Prabhupada said purity is the force. And at the same time, we have to understand that especially when people join this movement, we are all now trying to get to a platform that we are not actually there yet. So that's why a supportive environment of trying to help one another to do something that we are really struggling to do, that also is necessary. And not now in this Vaishnava society of having this mentality of, what is this? What is this? You wear this Brahmin thread, but I see that you sometimes eat with your left hand. Break off his thread and kick him out of the temple. Not that, because we're all struggling. We're all trying to do something that's very difficult. So these two things come together, and really ultimately one has to see that if we can simply do this, if we can create a society in which there is no hypocrisy, or at least if I can be a person that is not hypocritical, that is revolutionary, and the whole world will recognize that. If you are just someone who is not hypocritical, because you can see in the whole world, that is what the whole world is looking for, is people who are genuine. They speak about authenticity, authentic people. If you can just be genuine, people pick up on it immediately, and it is in one sense our greatest asset, is to try to become genuinely who we are, who we portray ourselves to the world. I'm very sorry for going a little bit over time. Thank you very much for your attention. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Ho Premanande.
Hari is good and he has many villas. I like to have a house. I have many villas. You have many villas. Yeah. That's enough. I always something. It's very for me, it has to be like that. In the time, with connection with what you said, the right and things like that. Yeah. Hari. But what is the real meaning? Hari, I know what Vilas. Not the person, apostle.
Ja, but to be honest, it's other day of Mila and you have a last. So something that's faster than just the pinches and Philippines. Just like
others. that's normal. That's normal. And they're going to look at me and think that was weird. This is normal. And I just find that really strange because from the KC Krishna's point of view, that's whether Krishna is purity. And it's, he talks about duality. I didn't want to ask this question.
It's an interesting one. Maybe we can but it is, I mean,